My name is Ginny, also known as 2/3 Lotus, everywhere on the internet. This clip is part of my series, The Poets of Twitch, where I analyze my viewers' writing live on stream. Nothing has been edited out, so you're seeing this exactly as streamed with all of the imperfections and tangents that come with being live. If you want to catch me live or want more information, check out the description. Otherwise, enjoy some excellent writing.
This may be a tangent off topic. Well, we're not really on a topic. This may be okay, but I'm obsessed with Boots right now. It's such a simple poem, by the way. It's read and how, yes, it is so good. You want to write a poem like it? Yeah, look at Boots, the poem, look at what it does. Try to emulate those things and see if you can. For anyone who does not know this poem, you're referring to Boots by Rudyard Kipling, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna show this on stream. This poem's incredible. Really freaking powerful. So let's see. Here's my screen.
Famous poem entitled Boots. Those of us who have never been engaged in actual warfare have very little idea of
How is the volume?
horror. One of the most terrible being the agonized impression made upon the minds of the infantry soldiers during the long forced marches. Soldiers have been known to go absolutely insane with the everlasting sight of marching feet all around them. We're foot, slog, 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 slogging over Africa. Foot, 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 slogging over Africa. Boots, boots.
That rhythm is incredible.
Boots, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11, 5, 9 and 20 miles today. 4, 11, 17, 32 the day before. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Don't look at what's in front of you. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. Men go mad with watching them. There's no discharge in the war. Count the bullets in the bandoliers. If your eyes drop, they will get the top of you. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. We can stick out hunger, thirst, and weariness, but not the chronic sight of them. Boots,
Such a good line.
moving up and down again. There's
No
no
discharge in the war.
Ain't so bad by day because of company, but night brings long strings of 40,000 million boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. I have marched 6 weeks in hell and certify it is not fire, devil's dark, or anything but boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Try to think of something different. Oh, my God, keep me from going lunatic. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war.
Yeah. Chills always. Oh my god. That is absolutely the correct that's so valid. Yeah. So you want to write a poem like that. Pinguino Man. Would you want to Yeah, let's do this. Let's analyze Boots. Let's talk about why this poem does what it does and what it's doing. because there's a lot of very important things happening, and I think it really works in our sort of like structure, meaning, sound sort of thing. So if you want, since you're looking to write a poem like it, I think the first step of emulation of a poem is understanding the poem you're trying to emulate, right? If you understand it, if you know what is happening, it's much easier to approach than looking at it from the abstract and saying, let me write a poem like this one. If I can say this poem does this thing, let me practice this skill, it's going to be much easier to get to a point of emulation. And emulation does not happen in like one work. It takes practice and iteration to come to something that you feel emulates a work. You can't just write one poem that emulates it. So, sounds fun? Okay. We will analyze Boots. Let me find a text version. Boots, Rudyard Kipling. And so, for example, Penguino Man, you mentioned sort of jokingly in the previous stream where we were talking about you making poetry video essays. And you said the title for the poem, or the title for the video essay, the poem that inspired whatever, like anti-fascist, whatever, the poem that became an anti-fascist anthem. And to like that idea, if you were to make that video essay about this poem, break it down, understand the history, understand the context of the work, you are going to, if you really understand it, be much more able to, again, emulate it. Like, maybe your style of poetic analysis isn't the 2/3 lotus stream style of analysis, where, of course, I get the poem, I write on it, I talk about it in front of Twitch chat. This is something I haven't experimented with, admittedly, as a poet, is different ways to analyze. Analysis is not only what I do here on stream. I have a form of analysis that is a very specific style and works for me. But maybe literally making a video essay and explaining it in that artistic format could be your version of analysis and lead you to being able to write something more like this. Because I think, fundamentally, we analyze so we can learn. I sort of teach through analysis, but what analysis really does for me is I get to learn more about poetry. I get to understand how to emulate other poems. I get to learn more techniques. And in doing so, I get better. So you could do the very same thing with a work like this. So, yep, tearing something apart to understand it. Yeah, reverse engineering in some sense. Take it apart and then put it back together your own way. See if it still works. So I'm going to read this. I'll do my own reading. Boots, infantry columns, were foot, slog, 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 slogging over Africa, foot, 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 slogging over Africa, boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11, 5, 9 and 20 mile today, 4, 11, 17, 32 the day before, boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Don't look at what's in front of you. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. Men, 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 men. Men go mad with watching them, and there's no discharge in the war. Try to think of something different. Oh my God, keep me from going lunatic. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Count the bullets and the bandoliers. If your eyes drop, they will get atop of you. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. We can stick out hunger, thirst, and weariness, but not the chronic sight of 'em. Boots, 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 moving up and down again, and there's no discharge in the war. Tain't so bad by day because of company, but night brings long strings of 40,000 million. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. I have marched 6 weeks and I'll certify it is not fire, devil's dark, or anything but boots, 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 moving up and down again. And there's no discharge in the war. God. So, Penguino Man, do that first. Since you also want to understand this poem. If you have not taken this poem and read it out loud, it sounds exhausting to read. It is exhausting to read. And reading these words, reading the words, we can stick out hunger, thirst, and weariness, but not the chronic sight of them. Like, what a powerful line. Having to read, all of this and reading boots, boots, boots. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32. We say boots 32 times in this poem. And I think until you have actually taken the time, Penguino Man, to read every single boots in context, you won't understand it. And I say that because I've listened to this poem twice now. Once a few days ago, because you mentioned it, once just now, and then I have read it once. It is an entirely different experience to read out loud than it is to listen to or to read in your head. Sound. So, what is happening in the sound of this poem? Of course, the main sonic device we have is repetition. And maybe if there is a poem that I would identify as a masterclass in repetition, it is this one. Because what does the repetition accomplish in this poem? Boots, 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 boots. Or slog, 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 slogging over Africa. Well, it shows you the slog. So this is our first sort of combination. So we have our trinity of sound, meaning, and structure. And repetition is already sound and structure, right? repetition is maybe fundamentally a structural tool, but it requires sound to repeat if we're reading it out loud, and it, of course, is going to impact meaning. So the first thing, how is our sound and structure impacting the meaning of this poem? And like you say, the constant marching and burden of the war. So repetition as a tool is difficult, I think, for one main reason. There's the question of not enough or too much. How do we know when our repetition has gone too far? Or how do we know when our repetition has not gone far enough? Thank you for the follow. Octa elliptical. 8 ellipses. I think we know when our repetition has gone too far. When it does not, when we start to lose meaning. If we start to detract from the quality of our poem because we just repeat too much, that it gets boring, basically. Ah, are you that modern day guy? No. Oh, William Shakespeare. He was a cool poet. Though I never understood his poem. You know, I am a modern day poet. There are many modern day poets. A modern day Shakespeare, maybe not me. There's someone in my chat whose name is Shake My Spear. They're more a modern day Shakespeare than me because they write more like Shakespeare. You're native Spaniard. Excellent. Welcome. We have a lot of people who speak English as a second language in chat. Lots of people who speak Spanish in my chat. None right now, maybe, but for example, Penguino Man is from Singapore. One of my mods is Dutch. We have a bunch of people from Mexico, Chile, Argentina, Brazil. So you're super welcome here, even if English is difficult. But yeah, we talk about poetry on this channel. Basically, that's all we talk about here. And I'm a poet, and there's a lot of poets in chat. So, and we were talking about repetition. Octa Elliptical, reading a poem called Boots by Rudyard Kipling. If you haven't heard this poem, I would definitely encourage you to look it up. And there's some audio recordings of this. Very powerful, if you like poetry. I'm pretty sure there's more non-native speakers here than native speakers most of the time. I think that is true at this point. So, yeah, like Young Solina's Turkish. Yeah, so many people. Inky, Argentinian, etc., etc. Okay. So, that means if we want to talk about whether the repetition takes meaning out of our poem, we have to understand a little bit about what our poem means. So, like you said, Penguino Man, it is about the constant slog. So it's a slog, it is constant, it is unending, war is brutal, war is forced, all of this. And if our meaning well, let's look at this. It's constant, it is a slog, it is unending. That means if we use constant, slog, and unending as a poetic tool, we actually kind of succeed. Like, the more of a slog, the more over-repetitive we get in this poem, the better the poem gets. Normally, if our poem is too repetitive, people are like, oh, it's boring. It just keeps saying the same thing. But This is the point of war. The point of war. Or not the point, but it's a strong quality of war, is this repetition, this slog, this constant painful effort. Which means we can take something, this device, over repetition, which would normally suck, and lean into it and add meaning. When I was a kid, I never understood William Shakespeare's... You said Shakespeare? By the time I grew up, I was around 18, I already made love to plenty of girls, so his poem meanings were outdated for me. What writer name did I say? Rudyard Kipling. Rudyard. Kipling, Kipling. I feel like, again, the end of the sentences also pounds that in. Yeah, so we have another meaning. There's no discharge in the war. It is inescapable. And then we return to the repetitive structure. If you're talking about the story of Rudyard Kipling, I read his stories. Well, that is the poem that wrote this. So, Pinguino Man. Moving up and down again. Oh, yeah, that too. Again, again, again. This leans in. This is meaning. Again indicates repetition from a meaning sense. And our main poetic tool is the repetition. So this is the intersection of meaning and structure. The word again has meaning, and it is also something that we reflect through our structure. We talk about like marching, and we accomplish the sound of marching. Boots, boots, boots. You know, they're trudging through the ground. It's constant step, 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 metered, marching. That's why he reads the poem like this, because it moves constantly, like a march. That's what the sound is. And of course, the meaning of the poem is also that as well. So we have this sort of perfect synergy in that regard between sound and meaning. And then the structure is what gives us this sound. It's the repetition that gives us the sound of over and over. It has a weight. Because like you said, the poem is exhausting. By the end, you get to boots, 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 and you just... It's almost impossible to read. So part of it also, like, length. Let's say the poem was, like, this long. The poem still kind of works. We're foot, slog, 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 slogging over Africa. Foot, 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 slogging over Africa. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11, 5, 9 and 20 mile today. 4, 11, 17, 32 the day before. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. But as we go longer, we can ask the question, repeating this structure again, does it get better or worse? And it definitely feels like the poem keeps getting better, more painful. And another thing we do, so we start with slogging over Africa. This is like pretty, I don't know, fine. We don't feel the pain of this line. We're just walking, we're slogging. We talking about miles, nothing with particularly inherent emotion. And then we switch to something a little more intense. Don't look at what's in front of you. This is like vastly more painful and ominous. Walk, don't look, don't think, just slog. And then men go mad just watching them. It is this trance, these boots. We have the meaning men go mad just watching them. And if you try to say, like if you read this poem, you will feel like you are going mad, I feel like. That's what it feels like. It's painful. And then we keep reiterating every time, and you can't get out of it. Try to think of something different. Keep me going lunatic. So now we're just ramping up to an even greater degree. Different, lunatic. Anything else. And then, maybe to tie into this line, count, count, count the bullets in the bandoliers. Something slightly different, but anything you can do in war is just the same repetition. Counting the bullets, walking with the boots, whatever, it's all the same. It's all repetitive. If your eyes drop, they will get atop of you. Not only do you have to keep going in this endless slog, this trance, but you have to stay aware of it. Because if you are not aware, you're in war, you could die. So, not only are you experiencing horror, the chronic sight of hunger, thirst, and weariness, watching suffering, but you have to remain acutely aware of these things. And there's no discharge in the war. It ain't so bad by day because the company, so the people alongside you, there's maybe a little bit of hope. The company, your group of soldiers. But night brings long strings of 40,000 million. So like, oh, that's horrific. I think this is referring to dreaming. It is so present, the war, that even in night, the only thing that one can dream of is boots. It ain't so bad because of company. But then, night comes, and all you do is dream of millions, right? 40,000 million. Many more boots than this person is actually seeing, an incomprehensible number of boots, because all it is endlessly, all the time, is boots. Is he referencing shoelaces? In which one? I'll let you elaborate on that. So then we go, I've marched 6 weeks in hell, and certify it's not the fire devil's dark or anything. No, strings of boots. Literally just like, because we think about this line of people marching, I think it's just boots and boots and boots and boots and boots and boots in an endless string. Yeah. And I mean, they are sort of dead bodies. But then, right, it's not devils, it's not the darkness, it's not the pain. This is not the horror of war. The hell that is war is boots. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. And there's no discharge in the war. It's horrific. I mean, we cover that there's no escapes through sleep. There's no escape through company. There's no escape through trying to distract yourself with other things. There's no escape from seeing all of this pain. You must remain attentive. There's no escape in sort of turning your brain off. There's no escape from the lunacy. And it is hell, and there is no discharge in the war. Like, and I think the poem is kind of the perfect length, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 stanzas. Nice, kind of symmetrical. I feel like if this poem went on longer, it would just be, I don't know, it might actually get tired. Like, you'd be like, okay, I get the point, Rudyard Kipling. But the way we ramp up is so organic, going from just slogging over Africa, just a hike, a little worse, to like the worst horrors we can experience, being plagued in our dreams by this thing, not having any rest, not having any escape, and then finally concluding that it is hell, and hell is the boots. Am I just a poet or a writer too? I mean, a poet is a writer. A poet writes things. But I don't write, like, I do not write, like, novels. Not right now, at least. Kind of flaming poets there, though. So simple, yet so oomph. Yeah. The poem is incredible. And, like, we can talk about word choice, too. But first I'm going to run an ad. I'm going to take a little break from this poem. And it's good to take breaks from poems like this, because they are painful. And to fully analyze them, we don't want to completely destroy our minds. So go ahead, do some self-care, get some water, take some meds if you do that at your time of right now. If you want to head off and sleep, head off and sleep. You can watch the rest of this later, Penguino Man. I'll be right back. Hello, and welcome back. My name is still Jenny. I'm still, the poet of Twitch. Maytari, welcome. How are you? Sorry I'm late, chat. I was talking to the police about how my family always abuses me. Going to be put in Adult Protective Service custody. Very poggers. I mean, it's a bad situation, but if you are happy, I guess you're getting out of a worse situation, right? So that's good. Like, awesome. We're going to read this again. Boots. And I'm going to continue to drive myself insane with the repetition of war. So here again is Boots by Rudyard Kipling. Infantry columns were foot, slog, 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 slogging over Africa, foot, 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 slogging over Africa, boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11, 5, 9 and 20 mile today, 4, 11, 17, 32 the day before, boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Don't, 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 don't. Look at what's in front of you. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. Men, 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 men. Men go mad with watching 'em, and there's no discharge in the war. Try, 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 try to think of something different. Oh my God, keep me from going lunatic. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Count, 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 count the bullets in the bandoliers. If your eyes drop, they will get a top of you. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. We can stick out hunger, thirst, and weariness, but not the chronic sight of 'em. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. And there's no discharge in the war. It ain't so bad by day because a company, but night brings long strings of 40,000 million boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. I have marched 6 weeks in Ellen certify it is not fire, devil's dark or anything but boots, 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 moving up and down again. And there's no discharge in the war. Boots by Rudyard Kipling. Oh, this poem's brutal. So, we talked a little bit about sound and how the repetition matters, but I think the choice of sounds matters too. So we start with slog, which is like sonically s-l-a-g. None of this is particularly like hard sounds, which almost gives us a slower introduction. But then we get foot, 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 foot. So these are sharper sounds. And this kind of shows us a very like punctuated, powerful repetition. And then, of course, the most common word, boots, boots, boots. We have this plosive at the beginning, which really pops out of the mouth. Boots, boots, boots. And then we also have the t sound. So it's just this constant hitting. Drop my pen. And it is that sound that I think something different. Like, let's say you said shoes, shoes, shoes. Like, shoes does not have the same ring as boots here. Boots is percussive, like steps. Shoes drags out long, more fluid. And we don't want fluidity in this poem because it's about constant, harsh, stark repetition. And we have these numbers 7, 6, 11, 5. So these are like a little lighter in sound than the boots, but we continue to grow more percussive after this stanza. And the poem does get more painful. Don't, 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 don't. 2 hard sounds. Boots, 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 boots. And then we talk about men. And we get to men, the poem pulls back again a little bit. Men, 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 men. And this softness of tone that we hear in men almost gives a feeling meaning-wise of having a sort of sympathy for these people who are suffering. It's softer. The men are softer than the boots. And this is the reality. The boots are constant, the boots are crushing, and the men are who are being crushed. Try, try, try. And then even, oh my God, keep. Harsh sounds in God and keep. A plea. And it's interesting, right? We can talk very subtle sonic things. Oh and my. The human element of this. Me, my pain. Soft, weary. God, much more harsh. God sounds more similar to boots than man. God. Much more percussive, like boot. Men is a softer sound. Count, count, count. Again, 2 percussive sounds. And then, talking about people, if your eyes drop. So the sort of human elements are these softer sounds. Then drop, percussive, because that will kill you. We, soft, can stick out. This is part of the slog, so it is harsh. But not. So now, that, again, percussiveness. It ain't. This is taint is short for it ain't. But taint, so bad by day. Because a company, which gives us a little bit of respite, which is sort of a fake out, a bait and switch. You say, okay, maybe this person is actually kind of okay. But then by night, the horror is multiplied. 40,000 million boots. Endless. All we can think of, even in sleep, is pain. And boots. I have marched 6 weeks in Ellen certify it is not fire, devil's dark or anything. Slightly softer, coming from the person, less percussion. To bring us right back to end the poem, boots. So powerful. So this is sound of like interfacing with meaning. The sound, we have these harsh sounds, which adds to the harshness of war. We have certain soft sounds connected to like men, which of course, when we look at men, soft word, next to the harshness of war, man feels that much smaller, that much more fragile and pathetic. There's no discharge in the war is indented. It gives it this sense of like weight in the middle. It sort of caps off every stanza and is central. So maybe the most important thing, there's no discharge in the war. And it gets repeated 8 times. So, in terms of the way that meaning, structure, and sound interface, this poem is a masterpiece. And it does something really interesting, an excellent poetic tool. We take something that might normally be sort of a bad choice, this repetition, and it understands the character of repetition. Why don't we like repetition? It is boring. It is a slog. It is painful. It is repetitive if we have too much repetition. But these qualities also overlap with war. This is something I talk about. You want to write a poem about war? All you have to do, not to make it sound easy, is make sure your poem sounds like war. Make sure your poem means war, and make sure your poem is structured like war. All like war. And your poem will undeniably be a war poem. This poem is structured like war in its repetition, in its constancy, in its evenness, in its length. This poem sounds like war in its harshness, in its rhythm, marching. And this poem means war. It cuts into some of the most horrifying parts. Watching others suffer, not being able to escape it, and the true pain being everything that we're doing, the constancy. And so, of course, the poem is titled Boots. Because it is a poem that sounds like boots, is structured like boots, and means boots, and shows why that is horrifying. So we're reading this poem because Penguino Man asked the question, or stated, that he wanted to write a poem like boots. How do we do that? Well, now we know why boots is what it is. It takes an idea, and it uses these things to understand it completely throughout the entire poem. And it uses a device to great extent that communicates that idea. So, if we want to write a poem like Boots, maybe it's that we want a poem that takes an idea and finds a device of writing that perfectly encapsulates all the qualities of the idea. This is pretty hard. We're limited in our sonic and structural devices, but we have some. This uses repetition. Maybe there's a way that rhyme, I mean, look at the device of rhyme. Rhyme tends to be light, not light. Rhymes have motion. They sort of tie things together. Rhymes are song-like. And we could list on a bunch of other qualities of rhyme. Now, if we find something that takes a bunch of these qualities as a subject, and then write a poem about that, using the rhyme, using the subject, and then using sound to encompass that idea. That could be a way to look at those, to write a poem like Boots. Now, maybe we look at Boots and say, I like the fact that it is very brutal. It is very painful. That's a way to describe it emotionally. It's painful, it is honest and real, it is gritty, it's raw, maybe. And these are things we can also express in some way through poetic devices. And if this is what you're going to try to emulate in Boots, a sort of thematic approach or emotional approach, then it would be taking something that you find equally, let's say, brutal to war, which could be all sorts of things. Murder, rape, colonization, which is war, I guess, racism. These things are all similar in their kind of brutality. War has a scale that, like, murder does not. So things that exist on vast scales maybe are required to get this much brutality, but murder and rape, for example, are so painful for some as war. So we could take one of these and say, what makes these things so horrific? Ask that question. Why are they so horrific? And then how can I take my poetic devices and the qualities they accomplish to be as horrific as those. Now, that's not an easy guide. That's not easy advice. That doesn't help many people arrive at a poem like Boots by Rudyard Kipling. But that's because accomplishing what I just described, I would say, requires a mastery of language and the poetic art form. This poem is masterful. That's probably partially why it has endured in its mastery. Maybe also because Rudyard Kipling was probably good at marketing his poems and stories and was a white man in an age where that gave him opportunity. These are all possible. But fundamentally, this poem's incredible. So how do you write a poem like Boots? You write an incredible poem that perfectly encapsulates a topic. But we at least understand what it means to do that, at least through this framework of sound meaning structure. Take an idea and have every word in the poem ooze with the idea. Have every sound in the poem relate to the idea. There's probably more to pull out of Boots. There's probably more relation to the topic that I haven't even touched on. But that's kind of the main idea. Now, here's the thing. If you're not already practiced in a bunch of poetic devices, trying to use them to encompass an idea is very hard. That's why we take time to practice our rhyming. That's why we take time to practice our sound, our alliteration, our assonance. That's why we take time to practice repetition. That's why we take time to just keep writing and getting better. Because the more we know how to use these things, the more likely we are to wield them masterfully to convey an idea. So, that's kind of my thoughts. I don't know if I want to play the recording of it or read it again myself. I think I'll read it. The recording's incredible, but reading a poem's a very personal thing. Boots by Rudyard Kipling. Infantry columns. We're foot, slog, 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 slogging over Africa, foot, 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 slogging over Africa, boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11, 5, 9 and 20 mile today, 4, 11, 17, 32 the day before, boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Don't, 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 don't. Look at what's in front of you. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. Men, 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 men go mad with watching 'em, and there's no discharge in the war. Try, 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 try to think of something different. Oh my God, keep me from going lunatic. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Count, 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 count the bullets in the bandoliers. If your eyes drop, they will get atop of you. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. We can stick out, hunger, thirst, and weariness, but not the chronic sight of 'em. Boots, 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 moving up and down again, and there's no discharge in the war. 'Tain't so bad by day because of company, but night brings long strings of 40,000 million boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. I have marched 6 weeks and Ellen certify it is not fire, devil's dark, or anything but boots, 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 moving up and down again. And there's no discharge in the war. Boots. By Rudyard Kipling. Yeah. It's powerful. It's easy to understand why we would want to write a poem like that. It's incredible. I've had the thought lately that when we're writing poetry, when we're reading poetry, when we're reading poetry, something we should try to do, I'm not sure if this is true, but really lose ourselves in the work. Let a poem like that consume you. Let yourself be in that place, on the front line, marching boots. Let yourself be haunted by it. Let yourself understand and empathize with the work. I think this is the most fulfilling way to read poetry, is to try to become it. Try to kind of kill a part of yourself and completely understand. This might be why I'm so driven to analysis, because poetry is a very powerful description of one's emotions. And I think the more you can become part of that as a reader, the more you can really learn from another poet or artist in any capacity. So sort of like obliterating oneself in reading. Because otherwise you're just taking the artist's work and kind of killing their expression with your own ideas. That's a poem that has instilled like more of that sense in me than most others, of really being able to lose myself in the poem. Reading it out loud helps. Boots, boots, boots. And for anyone reading it, it's like try that. It's exhausting. It's powerful. It absorbs you, and do it multiple times and come to your understanding of the poem and feel it. And I think you can kind of feel just a little bit of what it might be like to go fight in a war. And if you can do that through reading, then you've expanded your perspective. You've learned, you've grown. And if you're able to do that as a writer for someone else, then you're a teacher. And that's pretty good too. What a work.
Thank you for watching. I encourage you to check out the rest of the series, follow if you enjoyed, and stop by Twitch if you want to share your own work. See you there.